pads are useful for their purpose, but they are no substitute for brains.
All right, here we go.
I have to say, well done, Ray. Well done. Well played, my adversary. Well played.
Phoenix isn't gay, but if he was, he'd pick Fremo.
Oh, yeah, he'd be living down there with you in the bunker, man. Woo!
Once you go free, you always do the Z.
Like one day of not going to Duncan, and you could get a controller, a new Xbox, possibly even a cord.
And now here's the gang with the most bang.
Welcome to PGFG, episode 409. I'm your host, Chris Phoenix. Joining me, as always, my brother from another mother, Mr. Fremo Z.
Yeah, that one got me. Yeah, I chuckled.
Yeah. I got an idea for a couple of new intros that should be quite hilarious. But that one was good. I didn't even expect that one. I just hit the button. How are you doing this week, sir?
It's been a busy week, but we're doing good. Doing good.
That's good. It is hot as hell. I love doing that to Fremo.
You know what this is?
That's the world's smallest violin playing for me.
What's your high today?
Today I think it's gonna be like 82.
Ooh,
82. Humid 82.
time to put extra window units in the house.
Look, the difference is
Why don't you get the little lady on that?
No. The difference is for people that are just listening, we're excluding you in Alaska because you have a whole different level of hell up there.
That's different. That's a whole different ecosystem.
But Fremo's hot is a sweltering in your oven hot. Up here is that sweaty, muggy hot. It's just awful. It rains, then it does 82 degrees and humid.
Oh, the mugginess here is ridiculous.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's like you literally the only place I've ever been to and actually lived there for a while that is worse than this was down in Louisiana.
When you were, yeah.
And it's literally like like it's going to be 90 degrees, with 98% humidity. And you're like, no clouds in the sky, but it's 98% humidity. You literally walk outside with a bar of soap and take a shower. I mean, it's that
that's
bad.
gross. But
it's not quite that bad here, but we are where I live. Oddly enough, it's we're in the foothills of the Appalachians, so you would think with the elevation that we wouldn't be all muggy like that. But the area I live in is actually, on average, every year, a few inches shy of being considered rainforest.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
this
Muggy.
this kind of conversation started because I think it was yesterday. I said something to you like, "Oh, it's hotter than hell," and you said, "Shut up." Just flat out, just shut up. And it's funny because it's the same thing when Fremo called me a couple of years back, and he's like, "Dude, it's snowing. Kids don't have school." I'm like, "Really? How much did you get?" He's like, 3 inches. I went, "Really?" And I went outside, took a picture. You couldn't even see any sidewalks or anything else where I live. So it's snow. It's the exact same opposite. I can't talk to Fremo about heat. I have been down there,
and I can't complain. I can't complain about snow and cold.
Yeah, because it's fucking frigid up here. All right, so we got a good show this week. In our news segment alone, you're going to hear something that Fremo and I don't usually do. That's medical
real
shit.
News.
Yes, real news.
Medical. Yeah, medical. Yeah.
Let's get into it.
BGFG News. You heard it here third.
So whenever we talk about, whenever we talk about literally anything, it's always fun to throw science into it because science is important.
It's science.
It's whenever you have science involved, you're going to have a better outcome. And we've talked about that in the show before at length about how it can get kind of twisted sometimes. Not necessarily the science of it, but the people that are going to benefit from it, which is weird. So in the University of Michigan, they designed a nanoparticle inhibitor called AMD 3100. I'm sorry, I still can't say that without giggling, because the first time I read it, I'm like, is that a new video card?
Yeah.
Is that
That's what I was
process?
like, what series would that fall in
That's
with?
an old card.
Yeah. You heard it here way past third. AMD's released a new card.
3100. But it is called AMD 3100. It turns on the immune system to eliminate cancer, which is pretty fucking awesome. And it triggers the immune system again if the tumor comes back in 60% of the mice that they tested. Now, you might be saying, oh, well, it still leaves 40%. That's irrelevant, my friend, because the fact that this kicks in the immune system to eliminate cancer and it's eliminating brain tumors, that is massive. Massive.
Yeah, specifically for glioma tumors. Glioma.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, folks, now you're going to understand why we don't do medical stuff, because we're going to butcher the words, the process. But just know that they came up with a way to deliver the medicine into the brain, which apparently has been an issue in the past, to attack cancer cells, and they're being successful. So, good news.
Yeah, it's very good news. I love seeing when the science and the technology works for the positives. And we're truly on our way to having a better healthcare system through science. Look at what they're doing with skin cells. Researchers basically showing you that 50 is the new 20. Because over in Cambridge, England, Babraham Institute, Professor Wolf Reek rejuvenated a 53-year-old woman's skin cells to the equivalent of a 23-year-old. Now, before anybody gets like all science fiction-y on us and says it's email and shit, they didn't put him into like a tube like they did Captain America, like Steve Rogers, and just zapped him with some shit, and she came out looking like she was 20. They took some of her skin cells in a petri dish, and it's still in the early stages. It involves a chemical bath for 12 days, and it will rejuvenate your skin. Sounds a lot to me like a Bacta tank from Star Wars, don't you think?
Yeah.
But again, if we can get to that level,
or a sarcophagus from SG-1.
Oh, well done. Also a good. Love that show. Unfortunately, right now there's an issue where it does increase the risk of cancer.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. But let's just fall back on this for a second. Let's fall back on this because, again, Freemo and I are nuggets that have no idea about medical. So what we'll do is we'll get this done, get all of our youth look back, and then we'll go to the first story and we'll have the nanoparticles that will remove the said cancer. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I'm already looking to get some find some of the old tanning salon / video store setups that were really prevalent down here.
Yeah.
The two businesses in one building. With one side's nanoparticles, the other side's skin rejuvenation. You just book an appointment at one, book one a little bit later at the other. Just
wait 2 hours, then go back to the other one. But the professor said that now.
And don't forget the drive-through liquor bar at the far end.
Awesome.
So after you get done and you're leaving the parking lot, you're
gonna need something. You're gonna need something on your way home.
Your Hurricane or your Mai Tai or whatever your drink of choice is. We'll have it all, folks.
But the professor said that now that they know that this works, then they can start fine tuning it so it doesn't kill you.
Yeah,
which is good.
nice.
He said, and I quote, "The long-term plan is to extend a health span, not the lifespan, so that people can stay healthier longer." And I get what he's saying. This isn't a cure-all that they want to make you live longer. This is something that you don't want, in your 50s, 60s. I mean, we're getting there now, but let's say 60s, 70s, and 80s when things start deteriorating. I fell recently at 50 years old. I fell on a basketball court and I fractured 2 ribs. I'm like, what the fuck? That's never happened to me ever before. I've taken spills before. I was in karate for 30 years in martial arts, and I've taken plenty of bumps doing that and never broke anything. So as we get older, things in our bodies change. And the fact that this might be able to be something, easy there, kid. The fact that this might be something that you can. All right, go ahead.
I just had this image of you sitting over there on the bleachers with your sweat towel around your neck, and
A walker.
one of the guys, um, yo, Phoenix, sub in real quick, and you jumping up and throwing your sweat towel down, and as you're running out of the court, you slip on it, do a whoop, come down and break your ribs.
And then
sorry,
crawl back to the bench. No,
I know that's not how it happened, but that's just every time you mention it, that goes through my head. Sorry. Like me, I get to play.
But I see what he's saying though. He wants to create a better health atmosphere for older folks, and I think that's great. That's 100% great. It's also a good way to speed up healing. So a lot of times, I remember my grandparents when they would get cut or they would get hurt or something, it took weeks and weeks for that wound to close, and that is a big problem with the elderly now. My wife for a long time did in-home care.
Skin.
Yeah, my wife did in-home care, and that was a big problem with getting wounds to close. So this will be good. This will also be they're also gonna attempt to start using it and see if they can use it internally, including organs, which is also a phenomenal thing. If you can heal a organ internally, that's really good. In Boston, they're working on something a little bit similar at Harvard, at Harvard. Over in Harvard. Wow, that just zoomed all the way to the bottom. They're working on.
Are you saying that correctly?
Harvard.
Okay, that sounds a little better. It sounds like you're from up that way.
Harvard.
Harvard.
Old blind mice have.
Where you park your car in the parking lot while you eat your Pop-Tart.
Okay, we don't all sound like that.
It-
Pop-Tart. I don't. There's so because I feel like I have to defend my region every time this comes up.
Okay, say Pop-Tart. Go.
Pop-Tart.
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 Okay.
It's different for me because
you're thinking about it. You're thinking
no,
about it.
no, it's not that. It's because I've been trained for so long in radio and stuff like that.
But you know what I'm saying.
Announce my R's. Yes. If I get drunk or if I get tired, I start dropping some R's, but not a lot. Like there's very few people I know that literally, maybe I'm deaf to it. I don't know. But there's very few people that I know of that really talk like that all the time. Like, because they're from Boston. Like I don't know those people, but I also could be deaf to it because I live around here. Kind of like you don't hear Southern accents where you are. They're just
we don't have accents.
Oh, you do.
Oh, trust me, I know it. The 2-year-old brings it out. It's hilarious. It's like, what is this? It's a quab. There's like an extra A syllable in the middle of the word crab.
Oh, it must have been awful when you were in Louisiana too. That's like,
dude, that's how
you need an interpreter.
The Cajun influence. Yeah, I might be one of the few people in America that can watch Swamp People and not have to turn the captions on.
So over in Harvard, old blind mice have regained their eyesight and built healthier muscle, but some also prematurely aged. That's not good. Anti-aging expert David Sinclair has said in his published work that aging is a reversible process capable of moving forward and backwards at will. Well, look at this fucking scientist, huh? The aging process can be moved forward and backward. What do you know that we don't?
Yeah.
He says that our bodies hold a backup copy of our youth that can be triggered to regenerate. Now, I've heard that theory before. I don't know if I can get behind it. He believes that as one gets older, the cells just simply forget how to call back that information. Now, don't get too excited. Sinclair is testing genetic resets in primates, but he states that decades could pass before they're ready for human trials and more time to hit the masses. Let me back up a little bit. You're doing tests in primates. Like, should you start a little smaller like mice? because primates is not going to be a far cry from humans. And the fact that in this article, this guy didn't have that I could see had a doctorate or anything. So where the hell's this coming from? I don't know about this one. That's why I kind of brought it up.
Well, they've already done the mice. That's why they've moved on to primates.
I know, but you're telling me that you can move aging forward and back?
It's called time travel.
This it's episode 409, like the formula. This is magic because we can rejuvenate our cells. It should make us look 20, reverse the aging process. This is a hell of a show today, Free.
Yeah, that means we'll be able to rebrand and do 130-ish.
Yeah, that'd be great. And on the other side of the pond, over in the UK, researchers have just realized that that they can that they had a 53-year-old man in Germany is now cured of HIV. Now this is kind of a callback because we did the story before about the HIV cure or the possible HIV cure, and they couldn't say anything. Oh my God, yeah, that was 2019 that we did that.
Yeah.
But they couldn't really say because there was no long-term studies. You can't really say that somebody's cured when you're really not sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without
cure
long-term
versus
studies.
long-term remission.
Right. Exactly right. But then you fast forward to today, and this man hasn't taken any meds for the past 4 years at all, which is huge. There's still a lot of work to do, but these people are being cured only after stem cell transplant. Now, that's another thing we've talked about on the show before, stem cell research. Don't know why we're not doing more of it. The example I gave then and I'll give now again is that with stem cell research, you have wrestlers that have chronic pain or issues.
But here's the thing. And this goes back to the story we just talked about the cells forget. They don't remember how to function like they did when they were young.
Yeah.
That totally tracks with stem cell.
Yeah.
Because you're introducing stem cells into someone's body, and those stem cells are young. They have all that information, and it's being injected back into your system.
That gusto.
So maybe that dude's onto something with his whole, we can move it forwards and backwards.
I don't disagree. I mean, like I was saying, that wrestlers go down south to have stem cell work done because it's not legal in this country. And I know a few wrestlers that have had like rotacuff issues and stuff from taking bumps throughout the years, and they're fixed. You know, if it fixes it, rebuilds it. So,
but my question is, supposedly this is the 5th person cured.
Yeah,
I think they need to put an asterisk on there and define that, because everybody that's died from it's technically cured of it.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Oh, that's gonna give me some hate mail.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of work to do. People are being cured after it. Yeah, I'm going to skip right over that. You damn right. Typically, this is only done in cancer patients that have no other options, stem cell replacements. And the transplant replaces the person's entire immune system. So that's also scary too, because when you have a serious issue with your immune system, you might know somebody in your life somewhere that has an issue with their immune system, autoimmune compromised, lupus, things like that, where there's times where they have to stay alone in the house with a mask on because they can't get any outside disease because you have no immune system. Little babies are a good example of that as well. Their immune system hasn't even been built up yet. Which, by the way, let me rant on that for a second. You little moms and dads that are constantly, no, let your kids get dirty, eat some mud, build their immune system. They're extremely resilient. I'm not telling you.
Their immune system's operating at peak performance when they're little.
Yeah.
So let them build those antigens, let them build those antibodies, so that as they get older, they will be more resistant to other things. And that's been proven. Like all the antibacterial, everything that people have started using for the last 20, 30 years, which has caused all the bacteria to become stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And that's why when you catch a the flu or the cold, instead of it being a 3 or 4 day thing like it used to be back in the day. Now it's 2 weeks.
So
It's because
when
your
Gen
immune
Xers,
system can't fight them.
so when Gen Xers were younger, and those of us that worked on our cars, changing oil or whatever, just basically doing basic maintenance. If somebody brought out a slice of pizza or a sandwich, we grabbed that shit and ate it. We didn't die. There might have been grease or dirt or something on that sandwich that I was eating because my hands were dirty. We didn't die. We did okay. So don't overthink certain things with your kids or anything else. I'm not telling you how to run your life. Believe me, Fremo and I do plenty of that all the time. At this moment, we're not telling you how to run your life. Speaking of running your life, let's close the news segment this week with something that was kind of terrifying, in my opinion. If you look at the picture that we have up in the show on the live stream, you'll see a picture of what they call the DaVinci surgical. Oh no, that's the wrong picture. That's the medical interrogation droid from Star Wars. Let me move that picture over. There we go. So the DaVinci surgical system. This thing is fucking terrifying. And I did out of all the stories this week, this is the one I spent the most time on. I had to spend like 4 hours on this story because I could not believe the shit I was reading. So, as you can see, if you're looking at the show, if not, just look it up on your phone or wherever you're listening right now. The DaVinci surgical system, you should be afraid. So, this is like shit that when people talk about being abducted, this is what they're waking up and seeing above them. This is terrifying. It looks straight up. These things
are amazing, dude.
Oh, stop.
I know people that have had their procedures done with one of these. It's minimally invasive, way more successful than a surgeon going in and doing it.
I can't. It's all right. So for those that don't know, it's robotic assisted surgery. And like Fremo stated, it performs a smaller incision, which creates less healing time and less evasive maneuvers.
More precise.
Yep.
Once it's in the body. I mean,
yep. Designed in 2000, and it barely cleared the FDA. A doctor can use the robot. It's about 7 feet away from the patient, like the
control panel.
The control panel,
for lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's mostly like a giant VR setup that your fingers and your hands are in that can rotate. It's a very genius built machine, but for this, I don't know. They're eventually hoping to not have 7 feet away. They're hoping to have it eventually remotely, so that you can literally have this machine at the doctor's office. The doctor could be, well, let's face it, the doctor's going to be on the golfing green, taking a break in a private room and doing this fucking surgery, I can assume. Or maybe he's sitting in his mansion. I don't know why this exists, but let me continue. First of all, let's remember that if you thought Big Pharma makes bank, you are missing out, because MedTech, the medical appliance industry, known as MedTech, they literally dwarf pharma. And if you listen to the show long enough, that Fremo and I have a huge problem with Big Pharma and how much they charge. MedTech is no fucking better. If anything, they're worse. So MedTech industry last year was 500.
Call up and ask. Call up a diagnostic imaging center and tell them that you have to get an MRI, but you're going to have to pay cash. Because you don't have insurance right now.
Yeah.
And see what they quote you. It's ridiculous.
It's even a basic X-ray is hundreds of dollars. And the medtech industry last year alone made $536 billion. That's a lot of money. And this machine is at their top of the list. This costs hospitals about $1.2 million just to purchase, and then it has an annual maintenance cost of $138,000. Now, just think about this. Spending all that money for the hospital means that they have to try to use it. They have to. They have to recover their costs. So it's a catch-22. The machine's at the hospital has to recommend it as being used in a lot of different ways. Good, bad, or indifferent is irrelevant, because they just, from a financial point of view, they have to recover their money. So they have to recommend using it. And like Fremo said, it does make a smaller incision for more precise movements. But what happens when something goes wrong? And nobody's talking about that point. That's when the doctor needs to jump up and make a larger incision and get in there.
Here's the thing. Once AI is running these things, you don't have to worry about that.
Did I just hear that come out of your face hole?
Yeah, and I tried to make it sound non-sarcastic.
Okay.
Was I successful?
You were, because you had me going for a second there. I'm like, holy shit, you want AI to do it? Because you know AI is going to be like, oh, he's bleeding out. Okay, kill him.
Next.
Yeah. AI doesn't care. But when something goes wrong, the doctor has to jump up, make a larger incision, stop the bleeding, finish the surgery. If there's something wrong with the machine, Intuitive, the company that made it, needs to be notified. Then Intuitive contacts the FDA. Now, let's just think about that for a second. If something goes wrong with the machine, the doctor reports to the hospital administration reports to Intuitive, and Intuitive checks on it and then contacts the FDA. How many of these cases do you think that Intuitive is reporting to the FDA?
Yeah, how many times do you think it actually goes to Intuitive?
Intuitive, I'm sure, gets it and forgets that they got it. Because every time
I'm sure there's cases where they don't get it either because the hospital's like, we ain't got time for that audit review process.
Right, and Intuitive is
Did
going.
the patient did you, when you took over, did everything come out all right? Yeah, just tell the patient there were minor complications, but everything's fine. Move on. Nothing to see here.
And the ones that I can only assume that the ones that do get into Intuitive's going, all right, this is $1.2 million for each one of these units. Let's just get Gary to go down there and tighten up a few screws and adjust the arm a little bit. We don't need to file a report with the FDA. This is irresponsible. I was watching a show with the wife the other day about surgical implants and that fucking hip replacements and stuff. That is insane how that shit is grandfathered in on 504K plan, I believe it is, which it basically states if it's the same basic design, you don't have to repatent it or you don't have to review it. And that industry, they just lie and lie and lie and lie constantly. Now, with this machine in 2014, the FDA warned them that if they did not correct the violations reported, then they would be shut down. In 2014. And look, here we are, 2023, and it's still being used and talked about. They've had 245 adverse accidents. They've had 174 serious injuries, and they've had 71 deaths using this machine. One doctor that was involved in testing was told that
how many deaths?
71. Are you doing math?
It's science.
Yeah, that's a blip on the radar. They're not going to do nothing about that.
But still,
it's out of the 775,000 procedures performed using this, that's 9.161290322580645 e to the negative 5.
Okay.
I don't even know what that translates to.
So,
okay, times 100%, that still comes out to 0.009%. So it would be 0.00009% fatality rate.
Okay, so if
that's going to be their argument is take the same number of procedures performed by doctors
that's what I'm saying.
And look at the mortality rate, it's going to be higher than this.
I don't know. Because I think that if a doctor caused 71 deaths in 9 years, I think he'd lose his license. I would assume.
I don't know. Let's see.
So while he's looking that up, one doctor that was involved in testing was told that he should be fine after about a dozen uses. He should know the system itself. The doctor actually laughed. And he said, as a professional of over 20 years, it should be more like 400 to 600 times using this on cadavers and pigs before you use it on a human. Because of the level of difficulty. This is like a video game, people. I don't understand why they're being so lackadaisical with this. Not to mention the machine is terrifying. It takes more anesthesia. It takes more time for prep. There's a lot of shit going on here. And if you look at the machine, I mean, this is like the Rolls Royce.
So here's the percentage. One of the things this machine is used for is hysterectomies. All right.
Oh.
So out of the 775,000 hysterectomies,
Yeah.
I don't know how many were hysterectomies, but we'll just apply that 0.00009%
Okay.
is what the machine got, right?
Yeah.
For deaths
I'm with you.
associated. Regular doctor-driven hysterectomies, 8%
Okay.
for hysterectomies.
All right.
So that is to go from 0.00 zeros and a 9 to 8% is what, 100,000 times more,
Yeah.
100,000 times higher mortality rate for a doctor to do a hysterectomy versus the machine.
Yeah, I mean,
100,000 times higher
I can't.
mortality.
Yeah, I can't. That's one thing we don't do on this show is argue about science.
It's science.
It's if the numbers track, then the numbers track. I can't get away from that. Maybe it's me. Maybe I don't want to be under a machine that big, that imposing, with 4 arms that all have giant needles and scalpels on each one.
Okay, I'm not finding a clear definitive rate on the actual surgical procedure of prostate removal, but let me alter my search for just a second here. Very depends on the study, 3 to 6%.
Okay.
So you're still looking at 100,000% higher mortality rate with a doctor-driven prostate removal versus the machine doing it.
Yeah. Again, we can't really argue on the scientific fact and the numbers itself.
But I do agree with what you're saying about the fact that there's not sufficient oversight, because
there's not.
Who's to say, oh, well, this has been effective in these surgeries, let's try it in these surgeries, and then the machine ends up having 20% mortality rate on this different procedure because they haven't actually tested it.
That's quite possible.
And that's the danger of not having correct oversight.
What happens if you didn't have a tune-up? What happens if Gary was on vacation and he couldn't get there for the tune-up, and he's going to cycle it through next month? There's just a lot. I don't know. But again, the same could be said, because when I was talking to my wife about this, who is in the medical field, it was the same argument. She's like, well, what's to say that doctor isn't hungover when he comes in the next morning? Nicked something and didn't know it. How many times have we seen cases where tools and different things were left in the body, gauze, human error? This is supposedly going to take away human error. But how long, before it's going to be a decade before this machine's operating on its own because it's got all that data? Again, we're talking machine learning, like literal. We talk about it a lot on AI.
I was half kidding, but not when I said wait and see what happens when AI takes over.
But you're right, machine learning.
You mesh machine, AI, and nanobot technology together, and you might end up with what you see in sci-fi, where you lay down on a table and this thing comes over you, and an hour later you're
fixed.
Your burns are all healed, and
it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I want to make that clear to people, because you and I understand that, but some people don't. There is a difference between the AI that you're thinking about from Terminator and machine learning AI. There's a big difference. So if you're talking 600 procedures, AI is watching 6,000 procedures of appendix removal. There's a pretty good chance that a machine using AI can do an appendix removal. Pretty good possibility with today's technology. And that's after like 6,000 or so. So if you do decades worth of work.
Yeah, but even in that situation, I still want a big red button and a person standing there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get into this week's music. A little something new for everybody. This is a Canadian singer out of Toronto. Been around for a while. Found this the other day. Just thought it was a really good tune, good track. Her name's Fefe Dobson. This song is called Hungover. It made me chuckle. And then we'll get back to some stick style on the other side. So enjoy. Catch you on the other side. Fefe Dobson. Good track. I like that.
Got a very like 90s. Not that there was a lot of 90s punk, but it's got a 90s
Yeah.
punk feel to it. I like
It does. Yeah, good track.
And that was just released on the 16th of this month. So
You heard it here
look at you
first.
bringing,
Yeah,
look at
I
you
know.
bringing some new stuff to the table.
We do. That's how we do at BGFG.
And what's crazy is this artist has been around for a while because I'm scrolling through
Yeah.
here, and here's a song she did that was on YouTube 13 years ago.
Yeah, and she's still
So.
doing tracks. Yeah, so bring BGFG brings it. We broke Cage the Elephant. We broke a lot of different stuff first, which is awesome. That's how we do.
Black
All right,
Ray Lewis.
Let's get to this week's games.
Gaming.
So before we start talking about games, I do know you have someplace to be, so I'm going to enjoy my Modelo Negro alone.
Yeah, I've got a doctor's appointment here in a little bit, so
Finally going to get a cut, aren't you? So
no,
extended.
no, just a DOT physical. Guess I've never had one. I figured, hey, let's get one.
Cough. Let go. That's a funny story. When I went up to MEPS in Boston when I was going to go into the military when I was quite young, I didn't know till later on in life that the MEPS building in Boston, all the doctors there are basically like about to retire. They're like on their last leg, no pun intended, in their career in the military as a medical physician, and they just stick them there. So these old crotchety doctors, they grab my balls and tell me to turn my head and cough. And literally, dude was grabbing my balls so hard I could not cough. I'm like, could you let go a little? He just looked at me, let go a little, and I coughed for him. But I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You crushed my nutsack. But I digress.
Fast forward several years, and he crushed his own when he met me.
That's not true. Well, I mean, it is true. So,
he's like, I don't deserve to be called a man.
That's not the way it went down. So the hearing for Microsoft and the purchase of Activision is still going on and becomes like the most important story. And to be honest, Microsoft's cock blocking a little bit. They really are.
Yeah, they kind of brought on themselves with this announcement, didn't they?
Well, everything, yeah, but everything. So it's an interesting story.
But it kind of sort of, in a backhanded way, points to them not wanting things to be platform specific.
Yes. So it's hard to explain. So
yeah.
So maybe the listeners will give us some feedback on email about this because it's very hard to. Let's start off like this. Both machines, Xbox and PlayStation, have the same innards more or less, but they still have different coding. So publishers still have to write for one or the other or both. And it's getting easier and easier to do. PlayStation still has one of the best interfaces, but their market is really overseas more than the US. Xbox has got US on lock, and their services are a lot better. Like the Game Pass Ultimate, play on your PC, all that stuff is light years ahead of PlayStation. But when you get a PlayStation exclusive title like God of War, it's really good. And their interface is really, really good. So we've always been on the fence at Stick Style about the two. Because you can go either way. It's just that we all choose, because of the games, we all choose to do Xbox instead. And nobody's really upset about it. You know, it's not an upsetting thing. But the court case between for the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft is opening up a lot of doors and a lot of different Pandora's boxes for the company. And not necessarily Sony either, more Microsoft. So Phil Spencer, who's in charge of all of Xbox, who's I dare I say he's one of us. He's a gamer. No matter how you cut it, he's a gamer and he loves gaming. During the FTC hearing, he disclosed something very interesting. He said that they purchased ZeniMax to stop Sony from having Starfield on PlayStation only. Now, that's a very big dick energy move, you know? It really is. Because and when you
but you have to read into that statement.
Yes.
They bought it to keep it from being exclusive on Sony. He never said that Sony wouldn't get it. He just knew that if Sony got it, they wouldn't.
Correct. So lot of the
at the same time, he didn't say Sony was getting it either.
Fremo and I have said it 100 times. If you read a headline and it interests you, read the story. And then if the story kind of seems like it's too good to be true, read the comments.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. And this was definitely a headline grabber when they said that they purchased it. And that's basically the headline. They purchased ZeniMax to stop Sony from having Starfield on PlayStation only. That sounds really bad for Microsoft. But like Fremo was just saying,
when they're in the middle of what's going on with their Activision acquisition.
Correct.
Say that 3 times real fast.
Yeah, no. I tried. That ain't happening.
Acquisition. Yeah.
Good job. So Fremo's right, because when you look into the story a little bit more, they're actually doing this to help keep it on all platforms. And now ZeniMax is no joke. When they bought ZeniMax, it's not like they just went, oh, I'm going to get Bethesda. But they got Bethesda, which is Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield. Starfield's going to be massive. It's going to be so good. They
Elder
got
Scrolls is no slouch.
Right, and they're supposed to be coming out the new Elder Scrolls. ID Software, that's Doom, Quake, and Rage. 3 great games. Arcane Studios.
Ghostwire, which were Sony's exclusive.
Arcane Studios, which is Dishonored, Prey, and Redfall. And Phil's already expressed how sorry he is about Redfall. Machine Games, which is Wolfenstein. Tango Gameworks, like Fremo was saying, has Ghostwire and Hi-Fi Rush. So they have a good chunk of games now, but they're not going to be exclusive. Like they've said it before. Like one of the big deals was Call of Duty. And Phil Spencer's come out of his way and said, we're not going to stop Call of Duty from being on the Sony platform. We're not. And again, from a business standpoint, why the fuck would you? Now, sure,
you're still getting revenue from it, even if it's going to Sony.
I can't think of the game right off the top of my head, but I know there's been several games that released on one system for like a month and then released on the other system the following month. So you had like a month exclusivity. I want to say it was a wrestling
Sometimes they extend it to a year. Like it'll come out on one platform exclusive, and then after a year it can go wherever. Like they'll sign that deal. Like we wanted exclusive. Okay, well here's the price tag. How about exclusive for a year? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, and then you have the ones that are just separate. You know, what the hell was the fighting game? There was I want to say it was like a Street Fighter or a Tekken, but you had a Star Wars character Yoda on the PlayStation, and you had like Darth Vader on the Xbox. And that's the only place you can get either one of those, which was also cool. So there is benefits to having 2 separate consoles and having them have the game come out on both. But nowadays you have cross-platform and cross-play, and that's a big deal. Not that hard, but again, to the consumer, that really doesn't matter. Phil stated that the reason for the purchase was because Sony paid for Deathloop and Ghostwire to not ship to Xbox. So if that's true, and you're in charge of Xbox, why wouldn't you go and buy Bethesda?
Yeah.
To make sure that a game that's been 25 years in the making doesn't end up on the other person's platform. It's business at that point. It's not even like fair, you know. And then again, what is fair? I mean, that's like asking a fucking lion not to eat you because you didn't eat it. That's not how fair works. Spencer went on to say that every time they gave a game to Sony from their studios, Sony takes 30% of the revenue. And that revenue, which allows them to block Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, here, 41 million Warzone players, which is the latest iteration of Call of Duty. 41 million play on a regular basis, either through PlayStation 4 or 5.
Wow.
Why would you
Yeah.
cut out 41 million purchases of the
Yeah.
game
That's just bad business. That's all
just
that
to
is.
keep it exclusive?
That's
I
just bad
mean,
business. That's all it is. Phil was asked about Elder Scrolls 6 about coming out on both systems, and he
as
was
opposed to 29 million on
on
Xbox.
Xbox. Yeah, it's double, or almost double.
Almost, yeah, one and a half times as many on PlayStation. So, yeah, we're gonna buy this game, and then we're gonna cut the revenue that game makes by 30 something percent.
Yeah,
It makes no
that's
sense.
bad business. That's
No,
all
I'm
it is.
sorry. You would be cutting it by almost 60%. No, you're not gonna do that.
That's just bad business. And the fact that they're already asking him about Elder Scrolls 6, Phil Spencer turned around and said, yeah, it's way too far out to call. Because you don't know. You have to write it for 2 platforms, like we were saying. Now, the first game that skipped PlayStation was Redfall. And I don't think they're really sad about that right now. Because Redfall came out and it was pretty shitty. Even Phil Spencer apologized for it. The only holdup right
he
now...
even says here, Xbox, we've tried to compete, but as I said, over the last 20 years, we failed to do that effectively. So he's admitting that Sony is making way more money than them, getting more. I don't see them having more exclusive content, but they're obviously keeping more users long term.
Well, again, it's again U.S. gamers being naive. Like, you think that we're the be all and end all. We're not. The overseas market is phenomenally bigger than the U.S. market.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just Asia alone is pretty much all PlayStation.
There may be more Call of Duty players in Tokyo than in the United States.
Yeah, it's crazy big, and the U.S. gamers sometimes forget about that. The only holdup right now for the $68 billion acquisition is this case, as far as I know. And remember, Activision owns several gaming studios as well. That's why this is so important. They have Raven Software, which is the entire Doom engine, Neversoft, which is the Tony Hawk franchise. And again, you might be going, oh, there's not a lot. Tony Hawk still sells. And as soon as all this shit is done and over with, I guarantee you there'll be another Tony Hawk game. It's the skateboarding game. There's no other. Infinity Ward, which is, of course, Medal of Honor and Call of Duty. Treyarch, which is Spider-Man right now, which is super hot on fire.
And
Grey
Call of
Matter.
Duty.
Grey Matter's Return to Wolfenstein. All the classic gamers are there. And Red Octane is Guitar Hero. And everybody's waiting for Guitar Hero to get revamped and redone. Because that entire catalog is still available. It's huge. Another good example of all this would be the new Indiana Jones game by Bethesda, which is only going to be on Xbox and PC. Now, this is the argument for Sony, where why is Indiana Jones from Bethesda only on the Xbox and the PC? Is it because of this argument? Is it because of the court case? Or is it because they just didn't write the code for the PlayStation? It's a slippery slope. Like, why did they do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
It makes you kind of wonder who's right and who's wrong. And on the internet, and on an internet email from 2019, Microsoft said that they will, quote, spend Sony out of business. That was an email that was brought up in court. Spend Sony out of business. That's a bold fucking statement right there.
Yeah.
And they can. Really. Sony hasn't done a whole lot. Their TVs aren't that good anymore. They have no computers left on the market. Most of their shit just sucks now. They have no Walkman CD. Yeah.
The Sony Ericsson phones.
That's gone.
I mean, I'm sure there's still pockets in the world where that's like a thing, but
I'd buy one if there was. Sony Ericsson was my favorite phone of all time. It was just rock solid like a Nokia to me. Anyway, the head of Xbox Studios, Matt Booty.
I'm not going to argue with how good the phone was, but I would never buy one.
Why?
Sony.
Oh, you got to stop with this, Free. You got to give these companies other chances.
Who do you think wrote that internal memo for Xbox?
You gotta give some of these companies like EA, Sony.
Sony is dead to me.
I'm glad
that EA, you're almost there. You're in hospice right now.
That's right.
Maybe you can get back out. I don't know, but
give 343 another chance with Halo. Just nothing. So Matt Booty, head of Xbox Game Studios, wrote in an email that they needed to, quote, avoid a situation where Tencent, Google, Amazon, or even Sony have become the next Disney of games. And again, this was brought into court. This is not going to help their case. But at the same time, let's deconstruct that a little bit. Matt Booty, who the fuck are you talking to? And when was this? Because Tencent, okay, maybe. Google's out of the game completely now. Amazon's out of the game completely now. Both of those companies have enough money to buy into the industry again, but they won't because they tried. Both of them tried. The Stadia and what the hell was the Amazon one? Shit. I tried them both. And they were both good at streaming, but they had absolutely no game titles because no publisher or developer is going to work with you when you have Xbox and Sony over your head going, "Hey, look, you work with them, man. We can't guarantee you we're going to buy your game."
Yeah.
That's not something you want to do when you're in business like that. And because of that, Google and Amazon's gaming system are gone. And I think the analogy of the next Disney of games is a good analogy because it's coming down to two at this point. It really is. Tencent, I believe, is really big in the mobile sphere, but I mean, how much you're going to make in mobile gaming? They really, even if there was one company, it'd be like, okay. It's the rest of the gaming community that's where the money is, from esports all the way down to Billy Bob next door that just bought a used PlayStation 3 to play Spider-Man or Call of Duty or something. You know, it's a market, it's a business, and having somebody become the next Disney of games, I don't think necessarily is a very bad thing. I really don't. I think it has potential to. It's a gaming industry. This isn't. I mean, a lot of things are kind of going that way now. I mean, look at the car industry. The automobile industry is really. You have no more Buick. You have no more Pontiac. You have no more Mercury. No more Saturn. There's so many companies that are gone. Ford can sit there and tout all they want. They're just selling trucks now. That's all they're doing. Chevrolet still has
Mustangs.
Yep, and Mustangs. Chevrolet has
And that'll never go away because there will always be rednecks.
it's factual. Chevy's got the they have a Malibu now, but it's basically just the grocery getter, which I think is pretty nice in the Camaro.
Again, trucks,
SUVs.
and Camaros. And Corvettes for the people that can afford them.
Corvette's actually really.
I mean, for what
affordable.
you get, for what you get, it's affordable.
It's the cheapest supercar you can get. Yeah, cheapest supercar you can get. All right, let's get into the last segment. So from the BBC, look at that young grandson right there. Hey, buddy.
Say hi, Phoenix.
There you go. You're already talking like a northerner.
Yeah, unintelligible.
Right. Or from Louisiana. It's one or the other. All right. So over from the BBC News, I thought this was like super, super interesting. From the BBC News, Chinese-made cameras are everywhere, apparently. So they're in British offices, they're on the main roads, they're in government buildings, and they basically bought them from two companies, Hikvision or Dua. And they are literally an open book and a security nightmare, apparently. So the BBC had a hacker, quote-unquote hacker, nameless hacker, just literally dial into one of these cameras. While he dialed into the camera, he was able to look down at the camera and see somebody typing in their password at their desk, which is a nightmare for people like me and Fremo. That is the worst hack. That's the worst one ever, because now it just looks like a normal login, and we can't tell because it looks like a normal login. It's not a penetration. Yeah. So this is the worst type of hack. And the fact that they have these in government buildings and offices on the main roads, this is a fucking problem. And no one in the UK is sure how many of these cameras actually exist in the whole UK. these were the companies that the manufacturers went to. You know, it's like getting an Acme product. You know, you have Acme that handles the entire product line. If you want dynamite, you go to Acme. If you want a fake wall for a train, you go to Acme. You want cameras for your government, you go to Hackma or Hikvision. That's what you did. And they said, Hikvision said that they're an independent company and the UK has nothing to worry about this being a Chinese company and they have access. Really?
Yeah.
Bullshit.
If you're a Chinese company, you're only in business because the government lets you, which means that you're going to do what they tell you to do.
Yeah. And if they say, let's get access, let's have access. Look at Ring Doorbell in this country. The Ring Doorbell alone has police have access. Every government agency has access to it, free and clear. And the only reason why anybody knows about it is because people like ourselves here at BGFG and other independent news outlets broke the story.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to know that shit. And we're not saying, oh, they don't want you to know. I'm not trying to do a fucking full conspiracy because that's not what we are about. But we do have to point out the facts. And the facts are you bought cameras from China. China has known Huawei phones right now, I believe, are on the verge of not being able to be allowed sold in either the UK or Canada because of the chipset they have.
I just read something here because, anytime we watch a movie, and they got like spy stuff in there and, the people are like running up to a computer and they're like, okay, we're in, it takes
I have
like
to tell
3
people
seconds.
that's so fake all the time. Ugh.
Yeah. 2 guys, Healy and Scanlon, that work for this company, Panorama, who did the testing on these cameras for the UK.
Yeah.
Hacking a computer system without permission is a criminal offense. So Panorama is not providing all the details of how they do it. Healy and Scanlon started by locating the camera inside the broadcasting house. So this was the BBC caught wind of this, and they brought these people in.
Yep.
Test what's going on and see if this is a real thing, right?
Yeah.
So apparently the BBC has some of these cameras. Now, again, I don't know if these 2 guys were already on the network, if they were given, that level of access, or if they were just coming in cold. But Healy starts timing how long it takes to seize control of it. 11 seconds later, Scanlon says, we have access to the camera now.
Yeah. You know how you and I know how they did it. So let's explain how they did it. They basically did a sweep. They looked for IP addresses and essentially logged in because there's no security on them. So you just log in. It's an open network. It's kind of like if you have, I have 7 cameras around my house. So it's no different than me looking at my camera. You can walk in, Fremo can walk into my house with the Nest app and search for the camera.
Yeah. And if you hadn't gone in and if you just out of the box installed this stuff, then the default the default username and password is commonly known.
Right. But even more so, if you're on the network,
all you have to do is gain that. That's what I'm saying. If you gain access to the network, then you can gain access to a lot of people's devices because they've never bothered to take that simple step of updating the admin password or creating a whole new admin account and disabling the default admin.
Yeah, there's easy ways.
Which you should do. I would recommend the second one all day long because it takes a little bit more. But bare minimum, do not run devices with the out of the box default password, and just don't do it.
No,
because it's not like you got a unique default password.
I am the king in my home, not at work, but in my home. I am the king of default. But damn sure that every time I go in, even if the username's admin, I guarantee you're not going to be able to hack that password because I'm going to go in and change the password. And I've done tests where I'm sitting in the car, at a facility somewhere waiting for the wife, and I'm like, oh look, a Wi-Fi network, huh? I wonder what this password is for this router. Oh, let me try admin. Nope, admin password. Yep, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
I mean, it literally, yeah, you find a network you open a web browser, you put in 192.168.1.1 to go to the router. And right there, when it comes up to the login screen, you're going to know what kind of router it is.
Yep.
So then then you jump on a web search for default username password for
TP-Link,
you know,
Netgear, Cisco,
whatever.
Yeah.
And you might have to try 2 or 3 things, but you're in.
Yeah. Look, and we'll tell the sheeple this now. If you have friends or relatives, again, this is for them.
And then once you gain access to that, you
stop.
can see what
That's a lot of fun.
You can see what the Wi-Fi password is. You can
change it, lock them out. Yeah.
Yeah. Screw with port forwarding, open back doors, all kinds of wonderful stuff.
If you have a sheeple in your life, please tell them that if they're going to hook up a router or anything like that in their home, call a professional. If they don't know what they're doing, if they don't know how to change the password just for their router access alone. I mean, I got stuff from the cable company, and I immediately see if I can dial into it immediately.
Yeah.
And they're shocked when you called. There was an iteration of their high-speed router when it first came out, modem router combo. Then I called them up, the customer service line, because I used to work there back in the day. I'm like, yeah, I just want to get the username and password access. I had to go up like 3 tiers to get it. And they're like, why do you need it? I'm like, because it's in my home. I want to make sure it's locked down. I want to make sure that I have port forwarding active where I need it. They're like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're damn right, okay. Because it'd be no different if I had one that I bought from a big box store and put it in my home. I'd want to dial into it, of course. So tell your friends and family, or if you're smart enough, go to your parents' house, go to your friend's house, go to the uninitiated houses, and just do them a solid and change the password on the router. And then charge them when they call you back when they fuck it up. Anyway, let's get into some space news, because we love space news. NASA is now going to be doing some recycling free.
Yeah?
Yeah. They're going to be doing some recycling on the space station. Well, they have to. You have to think about this eventually.
Tasty.
You have
Is that
to.
where we're headed?
Yes, you have to think about it. You have to. At some point, you have to. You have no choice. They're going to recirculate and recycle pee and sweat. I don't know how really the sweat thing's going to work, but I guess clothing, maybe. I don't know. But the pee thing, I can see all day long. Because you do it, survivalists do it now. And it is pretty funny, but it's important for future space travel. Because it's not like it's not like a train or a plane where you just dump it.
So the Environmental Control and Life Support System, also known as the ECLSS,
yes,
is recycling 98% of all water astronauts bring on board the station.
Correct.
It's using advanced dehumidifiers to capture moisture from their breath and sweat as it comes off their bodies.
That's impressive. And it's essentially working like the still suits in Dune, where it recycles the water and stuff, which is, this is great. I mean, oh God, what are you laughing about?
Another subsystem of this, the imaginatively named urine processor assembly. Yep.
Oh,
it sounds like an engineer named that one.
Yeah, either that or a pirate, because pirates are unimaginative too. Pirate's Cove, Pirate's Leg, Pirate's Booty. Also from NASA, free. Also from NASA, they're developing for the same type of future plans. They're developing an AI system to help astronauts. And the fact that
I gotta stop reading this article.
It get gross. Yeah, it goes down a path that you don't want. So there's
That's a phrase I'll never be able to unthink.
What's that?
Urine brine.
Oh, I wish I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I sorry, I had to do it.
Oh, I don't even know
it's
what
in
to
my
say
head
to that.
now. I had to do it.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
That's almost as bad as Sally. That
Almost.
girl.
No, I'm not. No. So also from NASA, they're going to be developing an AI system to help the astronauts while they're in space. and it's a good idea. Again, looking at the forward and the space stations and things like that. NASA wants to put it on the Lunar Gateway, which is supposed to be the station they're building to help the lunar assets. They're really moving quite quickly with this whole bases on the moon shit. And I can't wait to see what's going on because I want to see the dark side of the moon. I want to see what's going on. There's a lot of questions here, but the fact that they're going to put this on is going to
can't wait. I can't wait to be a miner on the moon.
Oh,
you've seen that Sam Rockwell movie, haven't you?
Yeah,
Moon?
yeah. The Artemis missions are going to be a big deal, and the funny thing is that the only reason why I really put this in the show this week was just for the simple fact that if they do not call this AI system HAL, it's just a missed opportunity. Just a completely missed opportunity. I would be upset if NASA did not.
Yeah.
Because all those old fudgety boomer.
If it's not official, it'll be
known as.
Yeah.
Because all the shitty boomer scientists are now probably going out of NASA, which is why all the shit's moving forward so quickly. And you have to know that a Gen Xer sitting there going, dude, we're calling it HAL, right? Right?
Yeah.
Not even a question. We got this. And then high fives all around the room. All right. And the last story is probably one of my favorite stories this week, without a doubt. And it has to do with AI. Like we talked about earlier on the show, is that AI isn't always that bad. You have to understand the difference between machine learning and it's not all, Terminator and Skynet. It's really not. But AI can be used for a lot of really good things. And this, I think, is one of them. As you know, on this show, we love a good conspiracy. We've been talking for a decade about bringing out the Subtopia Null show. And one of the things that I'm into is the ancient alien theories. Because again, I'm not talking about lizard people. I'm not talking about, aliens living among us. I'm talking about just the fact that you have buildings and structures that are thousands of years older than the pyramids and nobody knows who built them. Or you have places like Pumapunku or Sacsayhuama that we have no idea. We can't build it. We can't build those structures today with our technology. So how the fuck did they do it back then with copper tools? One of the things is the cradle of civilization. So one
day us Appalachian Americans are going to embrace that challenge.
Oh, please.
And we're going to show you. We're going to show you how it's done.
There's no way you can make sharp corners with copper tools. It's just not a thing. It's just not.
Sure you can. You just need a lot of them.
A lot of them. So
and a slave population to do the work.
Oh, no slave population. Well, I see where you're going with that.
How do you think they did that?
That wasn't slave populations. I disagree with that theory tremendously.
Every culture, prior to recently recorded history in the last 1,000 years, and some haven't even gotten past it, have been based on slave economy. The hard labor was done by the people you captured. The hard labor was done by the people you defeated. You didn't do it. You did it. You had the people that you conquered to do the crap jobs.
All right. I don't disagree with your statement. I don't. What I do disagree with is when people put that on like ancient Egypt and building the pyramids. And
have you heard of the Hebrews?
I'm talking about ancient Egypt and building the pyramids. It was proven that there was villages or cities, mini cultural, right outside the pyramids that people lived and thrived, and this was their job.
I'm not saying there wasn't. I'm not saying there weren't economies. I'm not saying that they
weren't slaves.
And when I say slave, you're immediately thinking slave in the context of our history. That's not the context of slavery in ancient time was different. You were, if you were a slave to someone, say in ancient Egypt,
a king, a queen, a pharaoh. I know what you mean.
Okay. Like the Israelites were slaves in Egypt for a long time.
Yeah.
They maintained their own culture. They had their own economy within their city unit.
Yeah.
But they still were subject to and had to do what they were told by the Egyptians.
I
Okay.
I don't believe that.
That's what I'm talking about. No, that was the culture. That's the way it was.
No, but I mean, I'm saying if you want to help build the pyramid, you're going to get 2 loaves a day and lodging. If you don't want to help build the pyramid, then you're going to be hustling over by the river with fish and food, and you're going to be selling wares and things like that.
You're
and
doing what you're told when you're told to do it in return for X.
I don't know if I.
It's the same economy we have today. All right. The only difference today is that the worker has rights.
Well, okay, on that, on what you're saying there, if I want to go dig clams for my living, I want to go on a boat and I want to go dig clams for a living. There's plenty of people I know that actually do that. If I go out there that day, I'm doing it for me. Nobody's telling me what to do. I'm digging the clams, I'm selling the clams, and I'm making money, and that's how I'm living. Nobody's telling me to do that. So if you're in ancient Egypt and the pyramids are being built and you decide, I don't want to hustle with rocks, climbing rocks all day on ramps, then I'm going to go over to the river, to the Nile, and I'm going to fish. And I'm going to sell my fish to these people that are getting the free bread and lodging from the pharaoh. You see what I mean? Nobody's telling the pharaoh's not telling them go do fishing. They're just doing that. That's what they do.
But what you're missing is in the ancient world, you can still see it in some areas of the world today with the caste system.
Yes.
Where you have different levels of society.
Yep. Yeah.
You may have wanted to go be a fisherman, but if you were in too low of a caste, that's not something that you would be allowed to go and do.
Right. You're going to be subjugated to do what your caste.
So if you're on the bottom caste, you're doing all the stuff that nobody above you wants to do.
Right.
If you're the next caste up, you might have a couple more options. And as you move up the caste system, you have more and more options.
Right. And that still exists today.
That is a slave culture.
Okay. I see your point.
Okay. That is a slave culture because whatever caste you're born into is where you're at. You're not breaking out of that.
So as we talk about the ancient times and how they've lived and things like that, one of the things that is known is ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia, Iraq, to be more specific. This is some of the oldest culture that we know ever existed. Ancient Sumerians. They brought us the court systems. They brought us reading, writing, math. I mean, there's so many things that can be traced back there. Now, there's hundreds of thousands of ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets. And as you can see, if you're watching the show, if you're watching the show, they're just basically recessed into clay and then hardened. So there's maybe a handful of people that can translate these tablets, and the ones I have translated are huge. That's how we know how developed they were in ancient Sumeria because of the few that have been translated. The fact that there's hundreds of thousands of these tablets that have been found and they can't be translated. And for once, they're actually using AI for what I feel they should be using it for to begin with. They're going to use it to translate these tablets. Once that AI gets a hold of the language itself and is able to translate it, I think this is going to be some of the most astonishing information that we get, if we get it. And that is my big problem with this. I'm super excited. When I read this story, I was so unbelievably excited because just the amount of knowledge. I am a huge fan of knowledge, and especially of ancient history. And like when I first found out and read about the Library of Alexandria, or Alexandretta, whatever you want to call it, burnt down by the Romans, that literally broke my heart. I didn't sit there and sob and cry, but it broke my heart. I'm like, holy shit, the amount of knowledge that was lost.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable. It was, I mean, their pride was the fact that they accumulated so much knowledge from around the known world at the time. And then the Romans just burnt it down.
Yeah.
You also have a possible library underneath the Sphinx, or the other Sphinx that should be there. So there's a lot of questions about the Sphinx thing too. We should really do the Subtopia Null show. Fuck. So there's the big thing that's missing in our history is our knowledge of the past, of our history. Like we're digging up things like Göbekli Tepe that is proven to be possibly 10,000 years before the pyramids were even built. And there's reliefs on these in the middle of the desert with like swans and shit. Like, how the fuck did these people know that there was swans or anything else? You're in the middle of a desert.
I have a theory on that.
Ooh, what is it?
They saw one.
Okay, that's great. Good job. In the middle of the desert, though, buddy. There's no planes, trains, or automobiles.
So you were there 10,000 years ago? You know it was a desert then?
Okay, I see your point. It might not have been a desert. You're absolutely right.
I mean, look at what's happening just in the last 15 years.
Erosion stuff.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the Euphrates is about dry.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There's a lot of things. There's
You know, that was a luscious landscape at one point. Now it's.
Is it off the coast of Cambodia, I think? Where they found an entire like road and buildings that were demolished all off the coast. And it was obviously because the water level rose.
Right.
And that's also a debate whether that was part of Atlantis. So there's a lot of I gotta write that show. We gotta do that.
You know.
It's so much fun to talk about.
You look at the fact that there's good evidence to support the theory of one continent at one point in time.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
You know.
How come the pyramids in Egypt that are aligned and look just like the Orion's belt are the exact same setup that you see in Peru, you see in Mexico, you see in so many different continents have the exact same layout of pyramids or tall structures. And then you have China's got these, like, people thought they were hills, and the Chinese government and the people that are in the know knew that they were not. They were just grass and treed over. But they're literally emperor's tombs, and they're significantly bigger than the pyramids in Egypt. So there's a lot of stuff that people, let me tell you something, Free. My kids, the local teachers hate my fucking kids. The local history teachers
I know.
hate my fucking kids.
Yeah.
So many times they've called me, Mr. Perry, can you please not do that anymore? Can you please stop telling them about, because I've had my kids, like every one of my kids, when they get brought up in
the history and the history of science and all of that kind of stuff that they teach in schools. I'm the same point as you are. I basically just had to tell my kids, okay, just regurgitate what they tell you for the test so you get your grade.
Yeah.
And I'll keep educating you on what actually is real.
Yes. But I again, Free, I'm me. So I have to poke it all the time. So like when my kids, every one of my kids so far, I got one more kid.
All of Fro's teachers had many conversations with me because he couldn't keep his mouth shut.
I have one kid left in school, and put it this way, yesterday we had lunch and we were sitting in the living room and we watched an Ancient Aliens episode. And he was like, this is so awesome. I'm like, I know. All of my kids so far, when it comes up to ancient Egypt and the pyramids in school at any time, they constantly raise their hand. I've been called so many fucking times just for this one. When the teacher goes, well, they used logs to roll the blocks up the ramp. Now, before you even get into the fact that these ramps are supposedly 30 degrees and the blocks are like a ton, 2 tons, that's besides the point. My kids are the ones that always raise their hand and go, excuse me, teacher? Teacher's like, yes. Where did they get the logs in the middle of the desert? Because there's none. There's not a fucking forest nearby.
But not now. 5,000 years ago, they may
bullshit.
have been. They could have clear cut.
It's a fucking desert, Freemo.
That's why there's no trees. They clear cut.
No, they did not.
There's proof of vegetation in the Sahara.
Yes.
From a long time ago.
Yes.
The Sahara was not always a desert.
Yes, it was. There's vegetation. There's spots that have had vegetation. Look,
it has not always been a desert.
Okay, let's agree to disagree on the hasn't been a desert and there's trees there. Explain to me how a log.
Antarctica has not always been encapsulated in ice.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother.
Okay.
There's a hole
So,
down there.
so
might
would
be,
you agree?
yeah.
Would you agree that Antarctica has not always been encapsulated in ice?
Yes.
Then why could the Sahara not have always been a desert?
I'm not saying that it not. I'm saying that it hasn't always been a complete desert. There can be spots that had vegetation in it at one time. Look, even if we agree to disagree on that, how you explain to me
The
how
Hawaiian Islands have not always existed.
Ugh. And Atlantis was once there. And
Possibly.
yeah. Look, I'm
I'm
saying,
hoping they find it one day.
how do you get a one ton rock to roll up a 30-degree incline
You don't.
on wood? No, you don't.
You don't. You don't. You use a series of cranes and counterbalances to move it up from one platform to the next, and then place it.
Oh, I
And
disagree with that.
that's been shown. I'll send you a link to a YouTube video where this one guy by himself, after putting some stuff in place, walks up to a 2-ton rock and is pushing it with his finger.
I don't disagree with that because, and here's why. The Coral Castle in Florida, a little guy, 90 pounds, 5'3" or something, moved these entire rocks by himself. I believe I believe what you're saying. That's absolutely true. I think it was done slightly differently. I think it was done with anti-grav because we can use, Nikola Tesla proved that we can use a world grid of electricity. I feel that a lot of these stones and things were moved using anti-grav technology, using magnetism. We have maglevs now. We have trains that are floating on magnets.
Yeah, that could have been incorporated in, or could have been the way they did it. I'm just saying it's totally possible without modern machinery to build a pyramid.
Right.
Obviously, they're there.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of these.
Just because we don't understand the way that they figured out to do it doesn't mean that it had to be otherworldly.
But the point that I was making was
because
that
we've actually gotten dumber as a species.
Well, we
and
should.
That's been proven.
We could probably talk about this for another hour because just simply, I mean, we can go into Saskatchewan and how the stones are molded to each other. That's just, it's not that's a whole different animal. The fact that, like you brought up, Antarctica wasn't always covered by ice. And people might be listening to the show going, oh, these two fucking idiots, that wasn't always covered by ice. What the hell was it? Really? Because there's a map from the 1300s that literally has the coast of Antarctica on it. If it was covered by ice, how would they know that there's trees and a beachfront or a beachhead or any of that other shit down there? They wouldn't. Not to mention, it's a big question mark as to how the hell they got down there anyway in the 1300s. So don't think of us as idiots. This is something we've looked at for a lifetime.
Yeah, there's so much information that is out there. It is readily available if you want to spend the time to go look for it by people who have done the legwork.
Yeah.
Pretty much any conspiracy theory you hear about the ancient world is based off some archaeological evidence that there is a record of.
Yeah. And you say,
now,
well,
there are some obviously people that have run with it and gone all crazy in certain ways with it. But, you know.
Yeah, like I think we're just going to end up doing that. I think next time we have a short show where there's not a lot of news, we're just going to pull the trigger on Zootopia Null. Because it's so fucking interesting to talk about, because it's not like, even when there's 17 seasons of Ancient Aliens, and when and people I talk to are like, oh yeah, you're just an ancient alien conspiracy theorist. No, I'm not. I think it has great information and points great direction.
Yeah, there's lots of good information in that series.
But make no mistake, I fast forward through the aliens make up the devil, or is there reptilians, ant people in caves? I'm fast forwarding through that shit. I don't give a shit. But the one where they're sitting there talking about, how do we move this stone in this time to this spot? This stone isn't even available in this area. It had to float up the river with people that didn't even have a wheel at that point. That's the shit that's interesting. There's stuff in China. There's a rock in China that's literally hovering over another stone. How the fuck does that happen? You have people, Vikings, or druids, I should say, druids that are literally shown to be here in New England, in New Hampshire to be exact. Hundreds of years before they were supposed to be.
Christopher Columbus, not to take
Liar.
anything away from the deeds that the guy did do.
Barely.
He did make some voyages. He did find the West Indies. He's not the one that discovered America.
No, he didn't.
Because there is solid proof, like you said, of ancient Druid, Celtic, whatever you want to call it, culture in Iceland, Greenland, Nova Scotia, down into New England, hundreds of years before.
Yeah. And don't even get me going on the whole Christopher Columbus and what he did when he got here. Because that was just...
you want to talk about whitewashed,
That's no better than what the conquistadors did in South America.
Yeah.
No better.
Yeah.
But again, history, as we've told you on the show before, history is written by the winner. So, if you can whitewash something, why not
I watched
one?
Something the other day about, it's called the Moabite stone. Because the Moabite culture, the only place that it's referenced is in the Bible.
Oh.
There's like no record of the Moabites, like we have stuff from the Assyrians, the Sumerians.
It was right around
right?
it was right around that time, yeah.
But there's never been any historical evidence found of this. The only place the Moabites are mentioned is in the Old Testament of the Bible, and like definitive. There's like names listed, and there's all kinds of stuff that's a whole nother episode of Subtopia, or its own show even. But they found this stone, and it's called the Moabite stone because once they deciphered it, the information on there was about a king.
Yeah.
And the only place this king is named is in the Bible as the king of the Moabites.
Yep.
And it's him, a record of the victories he had over the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
And it matches up exactly
and
with the record of this king in the Bible.
And like you were saying, because they were all around the ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia time, that's why the AI deciphering these thousands of cuneiform tablets are going to shed light on this stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Huge.
All right.
Now, whether or not they let us know what they actually say is
that's a whole nother. That pisses me off when they do shit like that. Hawaii, Awani, the new keeper of Egypt, essentially the archaeologist. That guy just pisses me off on a daily basis whenever I read stuff about that. That motherfucker actually started doing shit around the Sphinx and drilling down and finding other chambers and stuff, and then suddenly just stopped. And then he doesn't talk about it, won't talk about it, walks out of conferences when it's brought up. It's like, what are you fucking hiding, dude? I can't stand people that hide knowledge. I hate it.
And what we need to do is start looking at Google images about a mile out from there or 2 miles out and look for where they're digging down to put the tunnels in.
Yeah.
So nobody knows that they're going in and doing whatever it is they want to do under the Sphinx.
I hate that shit. Knowledge
anyway.
is power. All right, that's it for this week. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, that's it for this week. 10's down, show's over.
Whoop, whoop.
So you can find more of this garbage at bgfgonline.com. You can also send us an email with your questions or suggestions at bgfgshow@gmail.com. Find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, Podcast, Castro, Castbox, Podchaser, and YouTube. Thank you for listening.